And the temptation is, you will be like God. And when we hear that whispered, we're like, ooh, that sounds good. I would like to be like God. And we may not think necessarily exactly in those terms, but isn't that what technology offers us these days? The ability to transcend human limits and to be like God, to be limitless, we could say. And so we could say, what do we know about God? Well, we want to be like God, so what is God like? So we can just take the most basic kind of theological attributes of God. That we know that God is outside the limits of time and space. God is limitless. Being limitless without it's being limitless sounds good, right? And so some more theological attributes of God is omniscience, that God is all-knowing, omniscience. And then you have omnipresence, that God is all present. There's nowhere you can go that he's not present. And there's omnipotence. He is all powerful. Those are just the most basic theological attributes. And so I want to suggest to you today that so much of our wrestling with technology is our striving to be like that, to be limitless. A striving to be like God, to simulate or replicate the attributes of God. To try to live like we don't have limits. And so let me break these three things down for you. So the first thing is omniscience, all-knowing, to know all things. You know, right now we have in our pockets the ability to search for anything. It's awesome. I love it. Like, if you have a question, you just Google it, and you'll have the answer instantly. You know, if you're thinking of a question, you just pull it out. And I do it all the time because I annoy my wife with how many questions I have, and so I'm just constantly like, oh, what about this? What about this? And you know, if we're hearing a song on the radio or at the store, like, oh man, what is this song? Like, we don't have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to think it through. Like, who sings that? Like, you just hey Siri, what is the song? Oh, it's Justin Bieber. Cool, all right. You know, like, you don't have to memorize those things anymore. We don't have to memorize facts or anything. You know, and who needs mental math when you've got an amazing calculator in your pocket? Like, we just don't do those things anymore. And then on top of all that, like through social media, we have the ability to know what everyone else is doing at any given moment. We carry thousands of pieces of information about our friends' vacation or kids' birthday parties or concerts or ads about products that we never even knew existed, but now I must have it. You know, like we're just constantly growing in our knowledge and awareness of everything. We learn in real time about natural disasters, earthquakes and wildfires and stuff. We can see in real time what is happening and get instant updates. And we see violence in other cities and politics and all around the world and celebrities and all their shenanigans. And, you know, all this information, all this knowledge, it's intoxicating. It makes us feel powerful. But it also clutters our minds. It clogs up our brains, honestly. Have you once stopped to ask whether knowing all these things actually adds value to your life? I mean, maybe, sure, some things, yes, but is all of those things worth it? Are we meant to know all of these things? And your response may be like, well, who cares? I want to know all these things. And I get that, but a very simple concept that my wife and I teach our kids, you probably teach your kids this as well, is like there's a difference between wanting and needing. You know, I need a cookie. No, you want a cookie. You do not need a cookie. And so there's a difference between those things. And sometimes, or maybe most of the time, what we want is not what's best for us. You know, I want to just lay on the couch watching TV all day, eating junk food and everything. Like, that sounds great, but if I do that day after day, that's not good for me. But I want to do it. So, you know, we doom scroll and watch other people live their lives, and we feel insecure about it because, oh man, they're prettier than I am, or they have more things than me, and we feel left out and inadequate, lonely, disconnected, and sad. We hear about these obscure, like, one-off crimes that happened on the other side of the world, and suddenly, like, we're scared to leave the house because, oh, what if it happens to me? And so we're filled with anxiety about these things. You know, the reality is having all of this knowledge, being all-knowing, isn't very helpful or healthy for us. Psychologists call it information overload, and studies have shown that it leads to increased stress, increased anxiety, and impaired decision-making. We're not meant to know everything all the time. It even impacts our empathy of things that we hear all these news articles, this tragedy happened, that tragedy, and this murder, and that thing, and natural disaster. And we're so full of hearing those things that we get numb to it. And so then when our best friend has some personal tragedy in their life, we can't even feel the pain for them. We're just like, sorry, bro, that sucks. That's the best we can do, because we lose the empathy of that because we're just overloaded with all this information. The second thing, omnipresence, all present. In our world today, the physical location has never been less relevant because, we can just FaceTime anybody we want around the world and have Zoom meetings and everything, which has its benefit. Like, once again, I'm not anti-technology, but we need to put it in its right place. And far too often, we just let it run rampant in our lives. And it's interesting that this idea of the Zoom calls and everything, because if you remember, many of us during the pandemic spent all day on Zoom with all these different meetings and stuff. And how would you feel when you got off of those meetings? Like, you just feel exhausted and drained, like, oh my goodness, I'm just tired. And why? You're just like talking to someone on a screen. Is it really that strenuous? But it's interesting that there's something about a disembodied human experience that just doesn't quite work for us. Whereas if you had the same interaction face to face, it's not as draining. It's interesting. Why else would people who are more connected than in any other time in history, and yet we're more lonely than ever before? There is something about the limitation of physical presence that helps us be more fully human with each other. That God designed us to thrive within boundaries of physical, emotional, and relational. And when we embrace those limits, we can actually find deeper connection, rest, and fulfillment. But technology is constantly tempting us to push past those boundaries. It promises omnipresence, allowing us to stay connected everywhere at once. Yet it's just an illusion. It's an illusion of connection that often leads to overwhelm and disconnection and loneliness. Instead of flourishing, we feel drained and anxious and exhausted. And social media causes us to accumulate masses of relationships. You have a long list of friends and stuff, but you can't possibly keep up with that many people. So we have inboxes everywhere. You have your messenger inbox and your Instagram DMs and snap streaks and text messages and emails, and it just stacks up. I personally know someone who has like over 1,000 unread emails because it's just like, it's just too overwhelming. I can't keep up with it. And so it just piles up, and there's a mental load that a mental toll on us when every time you open your phone, you see 1,000 unread messages. You're just like, I can't do this. And so many people struggle with anxiety and pressure, and they don't know where it comes from. Well, maybe this contributes to it a little bit. And, every kid, every one of us has experienced the feeling of rejection before, right? And so if you picture when you were a kid of, no one saved you a seat in the cafeteria, or you were picked last for the team, or being left out of a game, or not getting invited to a birthday party, those are sad and painful experiences, but they're always limited to, the context of school or something. But now there are chat threads and social media that entire schools are on, and so kids can be sitting in the safety of their bedroom while watching their friends or watching themselves get bullied online. Like, there's no safe place. We've broken those boundaries where it can happen to your kid in the confines of your own home. Having the ability to be everywhere isn't necessarily always making us better. And the third attribute of God is omnipotence, being all-powerful. Technology amplifies and augments our power, because we can broadcast our opinion online and we can go viral to millions in just minutes, maybe. We can order products online and they arrive in less than 2 hours. And man, that makes me feel powerful. I'm like, yes, anything I want, just beautiful. We can look at the whole world on Google Earth. We can utilize artificial intelligence to create anything we want. Technology makes us feel powerful. Andy Crouch, a Christian deep thinker, spoke on this subject, and he said that we are on a quest for, quote, easy everywhere. We're on a quest for easy everywhere. And he says the desire to eliminate all obstacles and effort. But when we trade effort for ease, we lose something valuable, the chance to grow, to connect, and rely on God. There's always a trade-off. So our devices are on a quest to make our lives easier, which sounds great, and a lot of times it can be great, but something is always lost when we make those changes, when we embrace them. That there's always a cost to convenience and comfort. Always a cost to convenience and comfort. GPS makes it easy to get anywhere without thinking, and I love it, but we've also lost the skill of being able to read a map or being able to navigate our own home cities without having our map app open. Texting is quick and easy. I love to text, but it also strips away the richness of the tone of voice and body language and emotional connection. And, so never have a fight over text message because you will always be misunderstood, I promise you. Streaming services let us binge watch entire seasons on demand, which is so fun, but they've also replaced time that we used to spend together playing games or having meaningful conversations. The days when it was just the new episode is once a week, and so, this is great, and then the episode is done. Well, now what am I going to do the rest of the evening or the rest of the week, You have to wait. Online shopping delivers what we want in hours, which I love that, but it's come at the cost of not being able to support local businesses, and the rich keep getting richer through that. Our devices feed an appetite inside of us of trying to be all-knowing and all-present and all-powerful, to be limitless like God. So the question then is, how is it working out for you and for your family? Last week, we looked at John 10:10, where Jesus said, I came so that you may have life and life to the full. Are you living life and life to the full? Are your kids? Is your family? When we look around, we see a society that's anxious and exhausted and depleted and depressed and numb. Does that describe you too? It's draining to be like God when you're not God. Who'd have thought? So what if there's another way? Not to become Amish and just throw all our tech away, but what if we put technology in its proper place in our lives? That's the end goal of this digital fast, is just to put digital technology in its proper place. And so why are we fasting? Can't we just be like, well, here's some best practices, implement them right now? Why are we fasting? Do we really have to step away from all these things, or can we just talk about some good practices to do? Well, Richard Foster, who is a Christian author and spiritual director, he explains brilliantly in one of his books on the topic of fasting. He says this, he says, more than any other single discipline, fasting reveals the things that control us. This is a wonderful benefit to the true disciple who longs to be transformed into the image of Jesus Christ, and that is what we long for. And he says, we cover up what is inside of us with food and other good things. Now, I'd like to suggest here that the other things, he says, we cover up what's inside of us with food and other things. I would suggest that some of those other things might be our devices and social media, doom scrolling, binge watching, that we're maybe running from something, or just we're overwhelmed, and so we're just covering up things that we really should deal with in our lives. But we cover them up with food and other things. And then continuing his quote, he says, but in fasting, these things surface because we're no longer stuffing them down and ignoring them. Fasting helps us keep our balance in life. How easily we begin to allow non-essentials to take precedence in our lives. How quickly we crave things we do not need. Our human cravings and desires are like a river that tends to overflow its banks. Fasting helps keep them in their proper channel. So that is when you may say, why are we doing this? That is why. It helps keep things in their proper channel. It helps reveal the things in our life that control us, so that we can be who we want to be, who God has created us to be.